You'll know this bridge. You'll have seen this tunnel before. But how well do you know your bridge tunnels? Yes, they're very much a thing, and they've been around for decades. There are bridge tunnels connecting Sweden and Denmark, joining Hong Kong and Macau, and crossing the two sides of Tokyo Bay. But it was the USA, however, that did it first, and in a place you've probably never heard of. All because of this, the world's largest naval base. But how did this trigger the need for a completely new kind of infrastructure?
Engineers have called the new crossing one of the 7 wonders of modern engineering.
And why has it become a huge building site again, more than 50 years later?
I'll argue one of the most important undertakings for infrastructure in the Mid-Atlantic, probably in our lifetimes.
This is Norfolk, Virginia, a small port city around 150 kilometers from Richmond, the state capital. If you're not familiar with it, then to be honest, you're not alone. But while this isn't the most famous place along America's east coast, it does have some landmarks of its own, including one that's kind of hard to miss: Naval Station Norfolk.
The largest naval facility in the entire world. It's the largest, and I would say more importantly, it's the best, okay?
Well, we'll leave someone else to argue whether or not it's the best, but it's certainly the biggest. The US Navy has more vessels based here than anywhere else on Earth. It's also home to the world's first ever bridge tunnel. But what exactly do I really mean when I'm saying bridge tunnel? Well, the name kind of gives it away. It's a bridge that transforms into a tunnel when crossing a body of water, then goes back to a bridge again before it reaches the other side. Now, the reason they're not that common is it usually makes more sense to do one or the other. After all, doing both can be, as you'd imagine, quite a bit more complicated. And yet, that's what the Virginia Department of Highways, now the Virginia Department of Transportation, or VDOT, decided to do back in the 1950s. Prior to that, anyone who wanted to go from Norfolk to Hampton across the harbour had to take a ferry, which was fine, except the ferry was really slow, it couldn't keep up with demand, and if the weather was bad, then the ferry just didn't run. So clearly an alternative route was needed across the water, one that could carry Interstate 64 for 3.5 miles. A regular bridge wasn't an option because huge Navy ships had to pass through the same spot. Building one tall enough for them to get under wasn't really possible, and they couldn't run the risk of a bridge collapsing and leaving the whole fleet stranded. They couldn't place it all in a tunnel either, because A, that would have been too expensive, and B, ventilation systems in the 50s weren't as good as they are now, which meant there were limits to how long a tunnel could be. So the choice was made to do what had never been done before: constructing 2 artificial islands that would allow the road to go most of the way across the water before disappearing beneath it. Then, vehicles would enter an immersed tube tunnel. It's where segments of the tunnel are pre-manufactured, floated out into the water, and then dropped onto the sea, river, or in this case, harbour bed. Next, they're sealed together, the water is pumped out, and the tunnel is covered up. It was one of the first cases of this method being used in the US, and it's still popular today. We've seen it before on the Fehmarnbelt fixed link between Denmark and Germany, and the Scheldt Tunnel in Belgium. Now, whenever I see an immersed tube tunnel being constructed, it always reminds me of like a toy building set, the way those pieces all link up and connect together. Except much bigger, of course. You can't build a real tunnel using just a pair of these. But there is now a new way that you can take on your own engineering challenges using little more than your hands and your brain. It comes in the form of these fantastic crates that I get delivered from KiwiCo. Each crate comes with a different hands-on project for you to dive into and is delivered directly to your front door. Each one is completely different, and they're a really good way of getting young people like my kids into STEM while also helping them develop their problem-solving skills along the way. The other good thing is that it helps me and my wife to keep our kids off screens for as long as possible. We are really proud of the fact that they read books, they go out and ride their bikes with their friends, and they improvise and use their imaginations as much as possible, and KiwiCo is a huge part of helping us do that. This month, KiwiCo sent us this. It is a kit that lets you build your very own vending machine, just like the ones full of toy capsules that have taken so much of my money over the years. Here it is. The kids and I had a lot of fun putting this together. It was a really good laugh, and they also got to learn about what happens, what goes on inside when you turn the crank, which is something you wouldn't normally think about when you use a vending machine out in the wild. I'm going to put some money in. Oh, look at that. Oh, it's worked. Look at that. So it puts out these little capsules, and then you can put whatever you want inside the capsule to kind of personalize your gifts. And my kids and I have had all kinds of fun putting like little characters in there from their toys, or even like chocolate sweets and stuff. So yeah, it's been really good fun. Honestly, it's the kind of thing that's really helped develop a bit of engineering thought and know-how in my kids, but also brought me close to them. We had a really good laugh putting it together. There are loads of other options too, and they cater to everyone, whether you're a toddler, an OAP, or somewhere in between those two like me. So guys, if you're keen to inspire the future engineers and scientists in your life, then spark their curiosity today by heading over to kiwico.com/the B1M, or clicking the link in the description. You can also use my code, the B1M, to get 50% off your first monthly crate. Now, let's get back to, where was it again? Oh yeah, Norfolk, Virginia. 1957 saw the opening of the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, or HRBT for short, because, you know, Americans love an acronym. It was so successful that a pair of similar crossings were built pretty soon afterwards. First, there was the massive Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel in 1964, and then the Monitor Merrimack Bridge Tunnel in '85.
It was 9 years from drawing board to completion at a cost of $140 million. It's Virginia's link to the future.
They were all built this way because they're situated on that same shipping lane.
One of the very unique things about our region here in southeastern Virginia that we refer to as Hampton Roads, it's a geographic area comprised of about 17 cities and municipalities. Our region, we have the largest collection of immersed tube tunnels anywhere in the world. We have 10. So the use of immersed tube technology, VDOT is considered a worldwide leader in using that methodology.
But as the years went by, it became evident that 2 lanes for the HRBT, one in each direction through a single tunnel, was not going to be enough. And so, in 1976, a second tunnel was added.
Upon the completion in 1976, we had 2 tunnels handling 2 lanes of traffic in either direction, so total capacity of 4 lanes of traffic across the harbor. However, shortly after, our local legislature started studying how we could again increase capacity.
Yep, it was time for another upgrade. Here's a very animated man to explain why.
Question: have you ever been stuck at the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel? Oh, and July 4th coming up. This expansion project is a game changer.
Well, I've never been stuck there personally, as it happens, but a lot of people have been. Around 100,000 vehicles use this key piece of infrastructure during the peak summer season. And if something goes wrong, there can be tailbacks of up to 5 miles. Because the lanes are narrow and there aren't any hard shoulders, if there's an accident of any kind, gridlock and bottlenecks are the inevitable result. Hence why VDOT is expanding it. Again. But this time they're doing it differently. They've realised that instead of faffing around with more immersed tubes, they could just bore a big hole. In fact, 2 big holes between the islands. They're using this. Yep, you guessed it. Here it is, cropping up again in one of our videos. A tunnel boring machine, and a bloody big tunnel boring machine at that, with a whopping 46-foot diameter and 430-foot length.
Here in the States, board technology in soft ground, like we have here at the HRBT, has really come leaps and bounds in only the last 10, 15, 20 years. In fact, the HRBT is using the world's largest variable density tunnel boring machine ever fabricated.
Called Mary, it was named after Mary Jackson, the mathematician and engineer from Hampton who worked on the NASA space program in the 1960s. Mary's task was to construct both of the roughly 1.5 mile long tunnels around 50 feet beneath the tubes that were built in the 1950s and 70s. It's because bored tunnels can't be constructed just below the harbour bed like immersed tubes can, which are covered up again afterwards. If you did that with a bored tunnel, the buoyancy of it would see it basically trying to poke its head up again above the surface, which would be no good. Instead, bored tunnels have to go a lot deeper, so they have more earth on top of them weighing them down, something known as overburden. But before the project team could do any of this, they had to make one of the islands bigger. Otherwise, there'd have been no room for the new trestle bridges or tunnel portals. Fortunately, this had already been done on the south side back in the 70s, but the north end was still too small.
Our North Island required our contractor to come in, build temporary breakwaters around the perimeter offset such that we were not exposing our existing islands to wave action. We then had to go through, dismantle the side of the island where we had all that large armor stone and riprap protection, fill that with good material that we could eventually mine through and excavate. And then, only then, when all of that work was complete, then were we able to bring the machine onto the island.
But how did the TBM get to the South Island, where it began its journey under the harbour? Well, first off, it was made over in Germany, and then shipped across to the port of Virginia in various pieces. Those segments were then transported to the island by truck before being craned into an open pit and assembled together. That's what these overlapping holes are for on the South Island. It's the launch pit, basically the starting point for the TBM. While up at the other end, the single opening is the receiving pit. Here is where the machine reappeared before it turned around and went back to drill the second parallel tunnel.
Teams worked to combine 9 million hours to excavate what is now the first bored tunnel in the state of Virginia and third ever for the US.
And yes, I did say turned around. Following the first run, everything behind the shield and cutter head was removed, and the TBM was able to do one of the world's biggest and slowest 180s. It was achieved using 16 nitrogen-infused hydraulic jacks, which helps to reduce friction on the 2,500-ton load. But it still took 12 hours. Nitrogen skate technology is another term for it, and it's only ever been done once before, over on the new Silvertown Tunnel in London. Overall, it took almost 2.5 years to dig both tunnels, with the grand finale happening in September 2025.
Today marks history as Mary, the tunnel boring machine, makes its final breakthrough at HRBT South Island.
By this point, good old Mary had burrowed through more than 1 million cubic yards of sand, silt and clay soil, enough to fill 70,000 concrete mixer trucks. Then it was time for her to be disassembled, with the components carried out through the same opening as before. So that covers the tunnel, but what about the bridges? Obviously, they've had to be made bigger to accommodate all those extra lanes without shutting down the whole interstate. What they've been doing is building a wider and higher set of trestle bridges to carry the expanded roadway. Meanwhile, traffic has been gradually directed onto the new segments as they complete, allowing for the old structures to be demolished. Barges were brought in again to construct the piled foundations or pedestals, as well as the girders that support the decks of the new bridges. They acted as floating work platforms for the heavy cranes and piling rigs that you need to carry out these tasks. Big machines that normally operate on dry land.
We had an absolutely massive marine fleet, upwards of 20 cranes at our peak out here in our harbor, whether it was driving piles, assisting with the island construction, setting girders, preparing bridge decks for concrete placement.
And yet a separate strategy was needed for the westbound North Trestle, which sits between the existing structures. It's a tight space that barges can't really get to. The solution was to call in another massive piece of equipment that sounds as awesome as it looks. This is a beam launcher. It was used to take the huge horizontal girders from delivery trucks, launch them up to the uncovered foundations, and then place them neatly on top. When finished, the new bridges will look something like this, bringing the total number of lanes up to 8. That's 2 general purpose lanes, a full-time express lane, and a part-time shoulder express lane in both directions. So hopefully people will no longer find themselves wanting to do something like this.
Hey! Where do you think you're going? Going home.
But of course, none of this would work without expanding the route that connects onto the bridge tunnel as well, which is why the approaching roads from Mallory Street in Hampton up to Patrol Road in Norfolk are being widened as part of the project. Now, if you're wondering what the cost of all this is, then the answer is quite a lot. But not as much as you might think, just under $4 billion US. That's less than the Gordie Howe Bridge, for example, which didn't have a tunnel in the middle. Now, most of those dollars come from a fund set up to finance new construction projects in the area, which in turn gets its money from local sales and fuel taxes. Now, usually this is the point where I tell you that the budget has absolutely blown up and is way bigger than the original estimates. And let's just say, I hope you're sitting down for this one, but not because it's over budget, because a US infrastructure project, a major US infrastructure project, actually finds itself on budget. If you excuse me, I might actually need to go and lie down to get over that. But before I do that, you should know that not all of this watery work has gone swimmingly. There's been a fairly substantial delay. According to VDOT, the design builder has struggled to meet projected production rates and near-time completion dates. Hampton Roads Connector Partners is the group in question, a consortium of several major construction companies. What was initially due to complete in late 2025 will now complete in early 2027. But this isn't an ordinary job. It's the largest infrastructure project in the history of Virginia, using the second largest TBM ever deployed in the United States. They're combining tunneling, bridge building, road connections, and marine construction all in one go. And it doesn't get much more complicated than that. Of course, a setback in the schedule is never good, but in this case you can perhaps understand why there have been a few unforeseen circumstances.
Keeping a project as large as the HRBT expansion project on time and on budget is a never-ending battle. It's truly an orchestra. If you only focus on one part or another, the rest get out of sync. So it is constantly an effort to keep our eyes on every single moving part and ensure that they each know their mission. They're focused on what they need to do such that when this project does come together, the roads, the bridges, the islands, and the tunnels, they come together in harmony all at the appropriate time.
America's just one more lane obsession might have sparked a meme, but you can forgive the good people of Virginia for repeating it again here. This historic crossing was never meant to handle what it's currently being subjected to, so the upgrade being put forward here really does make a lot of sense. In a country that often stumbles when trying to live up to its past construction successes, this project could be proof that it does still have what it takes. Don't forget to use that special offer code if you want to start your own hands-on engineering challenges each month with KiwiCo. It massively helps us out when you guys take the time to go and check out our video sponsors, and we really think you're going to like this one. And as always guys, if you enjoyed this video and you want to get more from the definitive video channel for construction, make sure you're subscribed to the B1M.